At Pico, we understand that a lot has changed. Like where you get a haircut and who does it. Where new lessons are learned and new careers are found. And even new ways to run your business. But no matter how much things change, you can depend on Pico to be there with the energy and help you need to power through.
Welcome to Inquirer Live. I'm Shemar Woods, Director of Digital Sports. Thank you so much for tuning in to tonight's conversation with Philadelphia 76ers legend Julius Dr. J. Erving and music executive and legend in his own right, J. Erving III. Regarded as one of the greatest and most influential basketball players of all time, Mr. Erving legitimized the American Basketball Association and was the best-known player in that league when it merged into the National Basketball Association after the 1975-76 season. Erving won 3 championships, 4 Most Valuable Player awards, and 3 scoring titles. He's the 8th highest scorer in ABA and NBA history, and he was well known for slam dunking from the free throw line in slam dunk contest and was the only player voted Most Valuable Player in both the ABA and the NBA. Being posterized, that slang basketball term was first used to describe his moves. His son, J. Erving III, is also a pioneer. Julius J. Erving is the founder of Human Resources, an industry-leading digital distribution company whose clients include Aunt Clemens, Pink Sweat, Baby Rose, and YB in the Mirror. Founded in 2018, Human Resources has powered the rise of numerous critically acclaimed top artists, crossing over 1 billion streams for projects released under its banner in less than 18 months. Last Friday, Sony Music acquired the Human Resources company. Previously, Jay also served as co-president at Adam Factory, where he signed Charlie Pugh, managed Nelly and Jeremiah, and oversaw several investments, including one alongside Usher, to provide school supplies to underprivileged children. Tonight, we will not only discuss their many accomplishments over the years, but we'll also dive into how they balance family, basketball, and their passions to become an NBA Hall of Famer and a powerhouse in the music industry. You can send in your questions at any point during the conversation. And for those of you who are watching on social media, please visit inquirer.com/ErvingsLive, that's plural, to submit your questions. Now, without further delay, I would like to formally welcome Mr. Julius Erving and Mr. J. Erving III to Inquirer Live.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great, Mr. Erving, Mr. J. Erving III. Welcome to the show. Now, I know my family, in the midst of COVID and the pandemic, the number of Zoom calls have increased significantly. We had 3 Zoom calls just on Thanksgiving Day alone. Not complaining, but I would say this year has reinforced the importance of family. I would imagine this isn't the first time you two are meeting virtually this year. Is that right?
Well, actually, on Thanksgiving, I was on a call with California, but it wasn't to Jay. And we just used the phone in terms of a little FaceTime. So we've had many, many FaceTimes, but I don't think we've done any Zooms. You remember any, Jay?
No, I think this is our first time doing a Zoom together. You know, obviously we've talked all often, but this is our first time doing a Zoom. I think this is our first time doing a discussion panel interview type, except for when you interviewed me the one time for NBA All-Star Weekend. Yeah, for the podcast.
Yeah.
Well, it's an honor to host both of you here tonight. Thank you for bringing the conversation to Inquirer Live. I want to start this conversation at the very beginning. And before I do, I want to cue up the conversation with a quick refresher on Dr. J's playing career. Here's a quick clip.
Doctor, he can do it all.
When we cut him off baseline, he started walking in air. Got the ball in one hand. And we said, wait a minute, he's got to come down. There's no way he can stay in the air that long.
And now the doctor goes to work.
With each dunk that night, the show got better and better. And the greatest of them all will become a piece of basketball lore.
teach class. That's what God created in Dr. J.
Now, Jay, I want to start with you. Can you take me back to your earliest memory of your father playing professional basketball? At what point in your life did you realize your dad was a superstar?
It's funny. I've been asked that question before, and I think it was, I've answered to people outside of our family that, my dad is from, Hempstead Projects, and my mom is, from the dirt in North Carolina. So, when we were home, things felt very normalized, and I think when we realized my dad was a celebrity, when we would go out, we'd go to restaurants or we'd go to the mall and people would run up to him and want an autograph or a picture. And when I was young, I got to be a ball boy for the Sixers. So I got to meet a lot of the players, and Magic and Isaiah and, all of the guys on the Sixers were, I got to spend a lot of time with the Mo Cheeks and Andrew Toney, and just kind of got to be around it from a very, very early age. So I feel like I wish I could go back and kind of, understand what I was watching at times, and being at All-Star games and dunk contests, and kind of being there when history was being made. You kind of wish you could go back and take it in from a more mature and kind of grown lens. But I was around the NBA, very, very, very young.
Now, Mr. Erving, you were at the height of your career and transitioning from playing the ABA when Jay was born in May of 1974. Now, I personally don't have any children, but I know how kids can change a parent's perspective on life. How did the birth of Jay and your children change how you approach the game of basketball and life in general?
Well, it was monumental. Jay was born in May of '74, so '74 I was with the Nets, and that year we were very, very fortunate. I was MVP of the league scorer, most valuable player in the playoffs, and we won the championship. so it was like all the things that you dream of having happen in your life, in your sports life, happened, and it happened right after he was born. So it was almost like he was a good luck charm, And when he was born, he had some physical problems. He actually had the croup, and I just have this vision of him, in the hospital in isolation, and they're telling us not to worry, but that was probably the most worried I had ever been in my life, because his birth was so significant, and he's just grown to be a special person who I'm very proud of. But I'll never forget those early moments, and how scary it was.
Right. I can't even imagine. When did you get the phone call that Jay was being born?
Well, I took him to the hospital. His mother went into labor, and we drove to the hospital. And, got him in, and she, went through the normal things that happen during labor. And fortunately, when he was born, I was home, because very easily could have been on the road, or because of my profession.
Right. Now, you talk about some of the challenges. Your career took you to Virginia and New York before settling in Philadelphia with the Sixers in 1976. What were some of the challenges that you faced in being a father to Jay and your children while balancing your professional basketball career and all the travel that went along with it?
Yeah, I think you take the attitude of trying to protect them as much as you possibly can. Because of the travel, your spouse has to be mother and father in certain situations. If I go on a road trip for 4 or 5 days or whatever, then she's got total control. She's one who's going to make decisions and make choices, and the children are going to look at her. And, like some kids are clever enough to play one against the other, but if it's only one there, there's no playing one against the other. You just have to deal with the one that's there. And, I would sometimes get caught up once I got home. But, my goals as a parent were to, try and be a good parent, try and be a great parent, try and be inspirational. I was not necessarily disciplinarian or dictatorial or whatever, because I'm kind of a fair and balanced person in terms of my personality or whatever. But stressing education and stressing good behavior. And I just remember with Jay and J.O. and Jasmine in particular, I said, because of the light that's put on my life, it's going to make some things harder for you. Some things going to be easier. Yeah, you're definitely going to have privilege, economic privilege, and you're going to be able to do a lot of things, as he was mentioning, go to all-star games, all that kind of stuff that other kids, don't get a chance to do. But if you take steps that are in the wrong direction or that are out of bounds, I'm going to know about it, because people are just going to come back and tell me. Somebody drop a dime on you, it's because that's Julius Erving's kid or whatever.
Right.
And what's he doing? Smoking behind, in the bathroom at school or whatever. So from little things like that to more major things or whatever, we still communicate about that, and not as a threat, but just as a reality.
Jay, did you feel that pressure that you were under the spotlight being the son of Dr. J?
I don't really want to say it was pressure. I think, more than I learned a lot in terms of what that I recognized later in life, what hard work gets you, and perseverance, and kind of being able to achieve a certain lifestyle for your family and provide for your family and protect your family on a level. I feel like I was able to understand those things better later on in life. But I wasn't a great basketball player, so I didn't really have the pressure there. I think that we probably put more pressure on ourselves in terms of wanting to feel normal, and probably did things that we shouldn't have done in order to show folks like we're down, we're cool, we're game, so we it's probably more of that than we put on ourselves. And I also have told people previously, like, this was before the internet era, right? So like if there was Instagram and social media when I was coming up, I probably would have had a lot more pressure, because it's like always a camera in your face. And I think the kind of globally people understanding the impact that my dad had, not only on sports, but also in culture, period. I think if there was social media back then, it would be, some of the things that LeBron's kids dealing with, and, other celebrity kids are dealing with. So we were protected a little bit by the fact that, you had to go out and pick up a newspaper to see what was really, going on with, the athletes and in that world. So.
You mentioned LeBron and his kids. You've seen how LeBron James has taken his son Bronny under his wing to mentor him in his young playing career. And I know your son, Jules Erving, plays at Cal. Mr. Erving, did you want Jay to pursue a professional basketball career?
That was something that we talked about with he and his brother, J.O., at a very, very early age. That, as far as sports were concerned, sports have been a very major part of my life, but I was not going to impose, my involvement in sports or my caring about sports on them. But if they chose to play a sport, I wasn't going to let them quit. So it was just like, hey, if you want to play basketball, baseball, football, whatever it is, hockey, golf, whatever it is, you sign up for it, you stick it out, because you might not like it, and you might not like the requirements of it because it's a lot of hard work. And whoever you have coaching, they're the ones who you're going to be accountable to, and you're going to be held accountable, and you can't quit. So there were a few things that they didn't try because of that rule, and I thought it was a fair way to approach it. With Jules, who's from my second marriage, and basketball is something that he was pretty good at. I mean, he got the height and got the physique for it, and he was a very good high school basketball player. So when he became a walk-on at Cal, that lasted about 2.5 years, and he was very good academically. He is very good academically. He's on schedule to graduate this May, but last January decided let basketball go, and clearly his choice. And I don't think he was. I don't think he was quitting. I think he was just, making an adult-based decision, because at this time he was already 21 years of age, and it wasn't the same as starting and stopping because you're giving it up and you're quitting. But he just, didn't see that as being part of his path forward.
Right. Now,
the
Jay,
other thing, Shemar, that I'll add to that is, like, if my dad held his hand up in the screen, you can see the difference. Like, I didn't get the height, the hops, or the hands. So basketball didn't choose.
You did like to shoot. You did like to shoot a lot.
Yeah, I like to shoot, but basketball didn't choose me either.
In basketball, well, just give it to me and I'll shoot it.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem putting it up, but I didn't get the natural gifts either. So basketball didn't choose me.
Now, Jay, while basketball might not have been your sport, I researched, I read, and I saw that you did compete in a professional sport. We have that clip from your professional debut.
Let's check this out. It's over.
Now, Jay, how did we get here? How did we get inside the boxing ring? And what was your motivation to take up boxing?
Man, I'm light skinned with curly hair. Man, I had to figure out how to defend myself. I've always been a huge fan of boxing, and it was I love boxing. That's just kind of the long and short of it. I've always been into the sport, and I remember one of the people that I got to meet early on in life with my dad was Pernell Whitaker, and he was always like one of my favorite boxers, and he was just so super cool to me. Like, he just like he treated us, me and my brother really, with genuine, kind of love, and out of all of the people that again is like taking for granted that I was able to be around, Magic and all these great basketball players, but when I got to meet Sweet Pea, it was like one of those moments where I was like, damn, I like him. I was impressed with him. But I've always loved boxing, and I smartened up very quickly, and that was one of one in terms of fights. I don't like to get hit either, so.
Now, boxing may not have worked out in the long term, but we can't say the same about your music career. You founded Human Resources, once again acquired last Friday by Sony. It's an industry-leading digital distribution company, and you represented recording artists such as Mario, Floetry, Cassidy, Danity Kane. What lessons did you draw from your father and apply to your music career in order to reach your own individual success?
Yeah, I think I learned a lot. I think one of the things that I'm still working on that is my patience. Just in terms of how calculated and strategic and patient my dad can be is something that I'm still trying to figure out. But I learned how to work hard. I learned what a good work ethic will bring you. I learned a lot about network and just your friend group and surrounding yourself with people that are like-minded and that are smart and that are moving in the same direction that you're moving in. I watched my dad and his friends and his network and how they all supported each other. And my network, my friend group is a bunch of Philly guys. I was partners with Troy Carter who is also one of my best friends for over 20 years. I was partners with, Sean G, who's also from Philly, is one of my best friends and runs Live Nation Urban. Ryan Press, who I grew up with, is heads up Warner Chappell Music Publishing, is president of their music publishing company. Sterling Sims, another Philly guy, is an A&R over at Hitco with L.A. Reid. So my friend group was it was something that I really watched. I watched my dad and his network and the people that he had around him and how loyal he was to and still is to his friends and his network and how they gave that back to him. But it's and the other thing was like understanding ownership, and which is something that my dad has been in preaching and talking about for a very long time. We've had the ability to sell a couple of companies, and that's because we owned them and we bootstrapped it, and we bet on ourselves, and those are all lessons that were instilled in me at a very, very early age.
Some of the things I just heard there: patience, hard work, ownership as well. Mr. Erving, were those some of the lessons that you had hoped Jay would take from you?
One more just before my dad goes. I think that is probably the most important is integrity. I think I think when people talk about my dad or folks that he's either done business with or been around, it's like it's class, it's integrity, it's being honest with folks. I think that's something that has been very, very important to me because I feel like it allows me to go in any room and kind of hold my head high, right? Because I know I didn't screw anybody, I didn't lie to anybody, I didn't steal, I didn't cheat, so that's something that I think was one of the more important takeaways as well.
Mr. Erving, when you hear that, how does that make you feel as a father?
Well, Shemar, needless to say, just very proud that some of it has rubbed off, if you will. I think the things that were passed along to me, my experiences with J. Bruce Llewellyn, with Bill Cosby, at a time in life when I was transitioning from professional athlete to non-professional athlete. That helped to shape and mold my approach to my business life. Being involved as a partner in the Philadelphia Coca-Cola bottling company and also a cable TV operation in New Jersey, Garden State Cable or whatever, because of J. Bruce Llewellyn, just, elevated, my whole status in terms of how I was looked at by others. I got a lot of calls. He's mentioned Magic a couple of times. Magic was one of the guys to call me before leaving college and going into the pros, and then after leaving the pros and launching his business career. So there's been half dozen or more athletes who have inquired about that transition. What do I think about it? How do I do this? How do I handle this? Do I just depend on my agent? Do I just depend on my lawyer? Do I depend on my uncle who's giving me advice, telling me what I should do or whatever? So those conversations are very interesting to have and to be sought out in that capacity. Just kind of makes me feel as though some right moves have been made. And life's not perfect. Jay and I experienced, tragedy in our life with losing his brother and my son, Corey. You know, I've lost people from really the beginning of my life on. Losing my little brother, and my sister as an adult, my mother, my stepfather, and my natural father. So, you know, there's a lot of highs in life, and there are a lot of things that, you know, you can talk about that make you feel good, but it's really balanced out by the lows, you know, by the things that you didn't expect to happen. I was on the phone with Jay last year, or year before last, and the house to his left and the house to the right had burned to the ground because of the fires in California. So it was his good fortune, his family's good fortune, that their house was still standing. But don't take anything for granted. You know, stuff that happens to other people could happen to you. And now that we're surviving in this pandemic, you know, there's no time for ego tripping. And yes, you need to be success driven. But, you know, one of my sayings has always been be success driven, but not ego driven.
Mm. I want to talk about, you know, just a couple of those tragedies, Mr. Erving and Jay, especially, you know, losing a brother, losing a son. How do you overcome those tragedies and use those experiences to kind of propel you forward and keep going? How did you cope with those?
Well, let me go first because I felt qualified to talk to, you know, my daughter and my two sons at the time when we lost Corey in the drowning accident. And you know, I had experience as a teenager losing my younger brother to lupus erythematosus, and I didn't even know what lupus erythematosus was. I probably couldn't even say it the first time I heard it. And he was always, you know, he was always kind of sickly and had asthma, and you know, just dealt with things that I never had to deal with. And I was always trying to be protective of him. So as soon as I leave and go to college, you know, my freshman year is when this happened. It happened in the second semester of my freshman year, where I get a call after being home for spring break, actually, and spending time with him. I get a call that he's in the hospital and they don't think he's going to make it. So the shock of all that and dealing with all that at age 19, and now, you know, here we were 30 years later, you know, because that was 1969, so now it's 2000, 30 years later, and we lost Corey. And I'll let Jay go from there, but my main objective was to, you know, just sit with them and be strong enough, having had the experience, to tell them what's really real and what I think and feel. And I couldn't tell them what to necessarily think and feel, but I did let them know that, you know, he is in a better place and they couldn't quit, and one day we'll all be there.
Jay, what do you remember about the tragedy?
Yeah, I think when you, to your initial question of like how do you get through it, I don't think you ever do. I think with respect to, you know, anybody who's ever lost someone that close, you know, I think it's something that is it doesn't go away, you know. And I lost, you know, my older brother and I are 17 months apart. You know, Corey was younger than us, but we were always together. You know, we were very, very, very close. And you know, I remember at the funeral, you know, people coming up to me and being like, you know, I'm sorry, or I understand. And I'm like, you can't really understand, because, you know, even folks that have lost people, I mean, everybody's relationships are different. So my relationship with my brother is different from anybody else's. And, you know, it was a very tough time, but I think it kind of helped save and shape my life, to be honest with you. I think that, I was still at a place and point in my life where I was doing some things that I that I definitely shouldn't have been doing.
Mm-hmm.
And, when it puts things into perspective. And I think, when my dad was talking about, the timeline of giving birth to a child and the things that happened after that, soon after my brother passed, my son was born.
Mm-hmm.
And, the mother of my kids couldn't even travel to, she was so far along when my brother passed that she couldn't even travel to the funeral.
Mm-hmm.
So I had my son, very soon after my brother passed away, and I named him Corey.
Mm-hmm.
And, now my son has a lot of the same mannerisms as my brother. And, you get to again, like there's those moments where you're like, I wish I would have spent a little more time. I wish I would have paid attention a little bit more. I wish I would have, reached out a little bit more. I wish, you just start to have those things. You try to remember those things so you continue to do them, with the folks that are still in your life. Right. And, one of the things that I love about my relationship with my dad is the consistency of it. Right. And if we talk to each other every day for, 2 months, and then we don't talk for a couple weeks, when we pick the phone back up, we're right back where we left off, and when we see each other, we pick right back up where we left off. It never wavers. It's very steady. It's very solid.
Mm-hmm.
And, but you just try to, remind yourself to not take people for granted. I think we get caught up in our day to day so often, and whether it's work or, social life or, chasing success or all of these things that we think that it's about. And I think you lose focus. It's easy to lose focus on what's important, who's important, what those people need from you. So I think that we have to continuously remind ourselves and not be reminded by additional tragedies, right? It's like you look at the social injustice that's going on in the world. And for me, who and my friend group who are pretty active in terms of trying to find solutions and, create and make sure that the spotlight stays on, the issue, the conversation continues in America. It's like, do we have to have another young Black person killed in order for us to remember that this is an issue? It's you don't want to have to wait on the next tragedy to remind yourself to do right by people, to tell people you love them, to, hug your kids, hug your brothers, reach out to people that you've had issues with. I think the important takeaway is not having to rely on additional tragedies to create those reminders in life.
Right. On the subject of, everything that's happened this year, especially with social injustice, I kind of want to change the conversation to the NBA and how they protested social injustice this year. Dr. J, when you see the NBA players who protested on that Thursday in August, what was your response?
Nothing short of being amazed that guys are standing up for themselves, standing up for others who can't stand up for themselves, and using their platform in this particular way. Growing up in the 60s and 70s, the things that probably were happening to their mothers and fathers during the Martin Luther King era, during the Malcolm X era, during the Kennedy years, the multiple assassinations of high-profile figures, and even presidents or whatever. And these are things that are a part of history that are real, and for the parents of these guys, their uncles, their aunts, and myself. Living through that, coming into the other side, and then seeing the same problems persist and no real solutions. And I have friends who I have these discussions with all the time, and I have one friend who's particularly consistent in saying, don't keep asking the victim to solve the problem. It's the person who's getting victimized, who's doing the victimization. They have the power to solve the problem, not the victim. So some of the conversations, they just go in circles, chatting, people, group together and say certain things based on emotion. But, it's sort of like if you had a prison and you just let all the prisoners rule the prison. Whatever. What are you going to have at the end of the day? You're going to have total disorganization and whatever. So the people with the power and the people who with the power are the ones who are putting the thumb down or putting the thumb up and saying yes or no or whatever. They have the power, and they're the ones who really have to come through with the solutions and be consistent with what they come through.
Right.
So I'm looking at it just generalizationally, and my heart goes out, and my support goes out to today's player, the leader of today's players. The fact that the franchises, the heads of the franchises, the ownership groups. There's 30 franchises, and all of them were asked to give $10 million to social injustice causes, or whatever. So they all gave $10 million, and they let a pool of money be put in place of $300 million, to help towards the cause, or whatever. But like platforms are existing in multiple areas and multiple levels, or whatever. And you can't be a party to it all. Right. But if we all are conscious of it and we all do our fair share, then we can allow ourselves to hope that things will be better.
I'm interested in the father-son dynamic of explaining racism to your son, especially you mentioned some of the things that discrimination and racism that you dealt with in the 60s and the 70s. After Jay was born, what were some of the conversations that you had in discussing racism in America?
Well, the reality of it all is my goal was to be like the Kennedys, and when I had my children, my wife and I, we wanted to be the Black Kennedys. The Kennedys were a very powerful family, had history, and way different than how I grew up and what I was associated with, and the dynamics of my mother and father separating, and then my father dying, and then my mother getting remarried, and the dynamic of that relationship. I always thought that sports would allow me to do things at a higher level, and I looked around for role models, and the Kennedys were the role models. So my family, and Jay included, and Jasmine and Cheo, they grew up in a household that wasn't really thinking about race being a barrier. They grew up in a household thinking about we want to be Black royalty, because Kennedys were royalty, period, and we want to be royalty too. So the things that we did and the moves that we made, probably the conversations that we had, played to that mindset. And interestingly enough, with all three children, their educational paths were a little different from one another, because our mindset was, let's find the school that's going to be best suited for my child, instead of taking the child and just saying, well, he's got to go and he's got to conform to what's going on with the school. So we ended up having 3 children, and they went 3 different schools.
Oh, wow.
Simultaneously. So they were not classmates with each other. They went 3 different schools.
Yeah, Jay, what was that like for you?
Well, me and my older brother got asked to leave a few schools, so there was a few schools that were off the list based on the fact that
they can laugh about it
now. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it was I think very similarly to how my kids are raised. Like it's seeing some of these things, some of the kind of systemic racism and some of the things that folks are dealing with around the world is a bit shocking, right? Because I didn't know racism coming up because of how my parents were. They had Black friends, they had white friends, they had rich friends, they had poor friends. There wasn't a criteria for being a part of our family. So and my kids are raised the same way. They see all different types of races of people in my friend group that visit me, that I hang out with. It just is not something that is was ever instilled in us in kids and as kids, and it's not something that I instill in my kids. And I think that we've been forced to have certain conversations just because of the things that are going on in the world still. I've been forced to have certain conversations with my children, and most specifically my son, who's 20 years old, driving around, living on his own. I fear for his life at times, and trying to walk him through how to deal with police if he gets pulled over, how to comply, just trying to do whatever I can to protect them. I mean, I'm living in LA now, and when they started protesting, and the protesting turned to violent protesting, there was 2 very meaningful things that happened with my children, where my son wanted to go out and be a part of the protest. And initially I wanted him to be able to kind of have his voice heard and be out and be amongst the people. But when it turned violent, I had to pull him in. And we had a really tough conversation because he wanted to be out and he wanted to be heard. And then my daughters, I had a conversation with both of my daughters about the difference between violent and non-violent protesting, and them not kind of understanding the difference and which one's more effective, and kind of talking that through. And the day after the conversation, my oldest daughter sent me a note about Martin Luther King and violent protesting. And, it sparked a lot of dialogue. And, my biggest takeaway was she's a senior in high school and has yet to learn in school about Black history, which was a problem for me, and it also reminded me that I got to take responsibility for teaching them and giving them that information at home if they're not going to learn it in school. But to be a senior in high school and you haven't been taught about, even the most obvious, the Martin Luther Kings and Malcolm X's, and
Right.
even the most obvious ones, that's not cool.
Right.
And so we got to take a lot of responsibility for educating our kids and helping them understand. And I think the biggest thing that my friends and I talk about often is, how do we give these kids a goalpost, right? Like, what are they aiming at? What's the, because we lack, really solid Black leadership at times, how do we give these kids, this is where you need to direct this energy. This is exactly what you need to be working on and doing. I mean, when you think about, what Martin Luther King did, and the strategy and the time and the planning and all of the things that went into what he was able to accomplish, that took a that took a lot of time and intention, and we need more of that for our, I don't want to digress too much, but we need more of that for our kids, and give them a real goalpost. Usually my dad's the long-winded one, but I feel like that was one of the
No,
maybe I quietly got that from.
Doing great, man. Doing great.
From him. But,
I'm curious, what else did you get from your dad? I mean, you mentioned how you're raising your kids in the midst of this year's pandemic, in the midst of social injustice this year. Taking a step back, as you raise your own kids, what page from your dad's book did you take for yourself in your own parenting?
Well, I think the that stability thing that I referenced before, right? It's I think people take it for granted, but it means so much when you have someone that's just consistent. They're always there. They don't get too riled up or worked up. They're going to talk you through issues. They're always there to listen. They're always going to be there to support you. They're also going to encourage you to go out and do it and get it on your own, and not kind of, not hand it to you. I was extremely blessed as coming up in terms of, the roof that I have over my head and the access and all of those things. But I feel like I was also taught to earn it and respect it. And, but that consistency is something that, is so undervalued. Just showing up, right. Just being there, like being consistent. I know that, I could talk to my dad about anything and he's not going to get emotional, he, one way or another. And, I feel like one of my biggest takeaways was, if I told my dad the truth, we could usually figure it out. And, I learned that by lying, but, it's I learned the lesson the hard way. But, I felt like if I told the truth, we could always figure it out and find a solution. And, there was, with all of my, not so much my sister, but with myself and my brothers, like a lot of parents we did with all of the crap that we got into, there's a lot of parents that might've just checked out and just said, look, y'all figure it out, especially when you turn 18. But, so just sticking by us, never giving up on us, always being there for us, is just been something that I want to try to be in with my kids. It's just being there, knowing that you have this solid foundation that you can always go back to, is just invaluable, in my opinion.
Now, before I turn it over to the audience's Q&A, I just have one last question for the both of you. As we've discussed during the course of this conversation, so much happens in life. There's so many different obstacles, challenges that you have to overcome. And I'm just curious, as you guys look back at your relationship, father-son, is there anything that you would do differently as a parent and as a son?
I can tell you what my dad should have done differently.
What's that?
You can go first, because I did come up with an answer, and but I have mixed emotions about my answer. So
he should have forced me to play golf when I was younger, more and learn the game.
Okay.
I got the bug now. And
we're on the same page.
I wish I would have stayed at it when I was when he introduced it to me when I was younger.
I'll tell you the thing that consistently happened, because I was at an all men's club called Squires, and I take them out there to play, and they wanted to do everything but play. They wanted to loosen the strap on the cart, so when you drove off, the clubs would fall off. They thought that was funny. And we usually go out there Saturday morning to get a nice pancake breakfast, get stuffed, and then go out on the course. We could never play more than 9 holes because there was just too many shenanigans going on.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But I look back, and I'm a believer in academics. I mean, I went to Umass for 3 years, and then I left school and I started my pro career. And then it took me probably another 15 years to get enough credits to get my bachelor's degree. So after high school for Jay, he went to Clark, Atlanta, and it's a very prominent, very famous. You're a Hampton guy, so you know Clark,
Right.
whatever. So suddenly he ends up back in Philly, and I think he tells me that he transfers to Temple. So while I'm thinking he's at Temple, he and Troy are starting a business with Zori Edwards, who's Patti LaBelle's son, or whatever. So in looking back at it, I mean, I wouldn't change anything, but I did feel like, I wanted to see him go to college and get a bachelor's degree anyway, because that was just the modus operandi, and a measure of pride for Black families. Get a kid to go to college, go straight through. Somebody go straight through, and as it turned out, my daughter did it. So he got his pass when she graduated from Spelman in 4 years, and he got his pass, but he got on that path to where he is now. So I look on him with a lot of pride, but I didn't totally put my foot down because I didn't know his moves. He was so slick with it. He was so slick. I thought he was definitely at Temple.
Yeah, I wasn't at Temple.
Never set foot on the campus.
Audience to see Q&As now. Just ask a couple questions as we wrap up. I want to thank you both for joining us here on Inquirer Live. The first is this one going to come from W. Palladino. This is a question for Mr. Julius Erving. People around the world know you for your illustrious basketball career, but I have thought of you for many years as a successful businessman. At what point in your basketball career did you start to pivot toward business, and how did you learn to navigate the business world?
Well, I think it was always there because playing professional basketball is business. So there's a business side of it that you have to adapt to very quickly. You have lawyers and you have accountants and you have employees that are part of your business. You're instantly your name and your brand become a business. I think the last 2 years of my career, when I probably focused most directly on what I wanted to do in that relationship with Mr. Llewellyn, Mr. Cosby, led me to become one of the proprietors of Philadelphia Coca-Cola bottling company. Some years before, I had started a personal holding company called the Erving Group, and that was maybe like circa 1979. So I was already 8 years in position with the Erving Group, and now the Erving Group still exists today, all these years later. But it was a series of moves, not just one move, because everything doesn't work for you, and many of the things that I've tried to do in my business life have not worked. But for me, basketball was so consuming for so many years. I wanted my business life to be diversified. I did not want to just do one thing after being a professional basketball player. I wanted to be involved in multiple projects, do multiple things. I know they probably wouldn't all be successful at the same time, but they certainly weren't all going to be unsuccessful at the same time. And I still feel that way today. I mean, I like diversity in my business life.
Next question I have: best NBA player, LeBron James or Michael Jordan?
With all respect to both of them, and LeBron is still playing, so he has still time to claim the spot. But I think Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Oh wow!
Is the all-time best NBA player, and probably because many of the years of my career I was like in his shadow, and I always thought if I was out of his shadow, then maybe I could claim that spot. But if I were going to start a franchise tomorrow, I'd start with him.
How about you, Jay?
He also thinks Tim Duncan's the best power forward in the history of basketball. So he's a little skewed in terms of his.
Well, I can go even farther than that because my all-time team, right, is different than everybody else's. Because I picked my team when I was 15 years old, and I picked Jerry West, Oscar Robertson, Elgin Baylor, Wilt Chamberlain, and Bill Russell. So that's my team. That's my team. Now, they might call me a little delusional because of that or whatever, but I made that decision, and I'm one of those guys. Sometimes, you get stuck when you make a decision. You can't go back on your own word.
Right.
I got Magic, Mike, LeBron, Kobe, and Shaq.
Okay, that's a good list. Good list.
You got to revolve. You got a revolving door. Your team.
That's my list.
Next question that I have, don't want to take up too much more time. Again, thank you for joining us here tonight. This one comes from N. Feller. I was at Umass when you were there, Dr. J. How did your time there impact your life and your career?
I'd say positively, for sure. The 3 years that I was there, other than the cold winters, I actually had a college sweetheart, which was very good, and I made some lifelong friendships. One of my friends who actually went to high school with me and went to UMass, the guy who actually gave me my nickname, started calling me the doctor. He was the first one to call me the doctor, and I called him the professor. That was Leon Saunders. My coach, the head coach, Jack Lehman, as well as the assistant coach, Ray Wilson, who was my high school coach, were great mentors and role models for me. And while I'm mentioning role models, Charles McElwain and Earl Mosley were two others from my high school years who were great mentors for me, and consistent with what Jay is saying about, having friends in your life. These are some of the people who he met while he was growing up, who I spent time with, and who I was influenced by, and who I was able to influence.
Right. Next question. This one comes from Dr. Jules 72. Good evening to Jay and Julius. This question is for Jay. Are you looking for any new musical talent? And if so, what is the best way to get you to look at some raw talent?
Mm-hmm.
And he also has a comment, and to Dr. J, you will always be the greatest to me.
Cool.
Yeah, we're always looking for new talent. It's what we've learned is that, it's talent can come from anywhere. It could come from a friend, a cold email. So I listen to everything that's sent to me. Every piece of music that gets to my inbox, I listen to it. Our Instagram is human.re.sources. So we take a lot of submissions through our DM. So artists can feel free to reach out to us, or managers can reach out to us at our Instagram.
Let's talk a little bit more about, human resources. The deal, once again, Sony Music acquired human resources last Friday. Can you share with us the details of that acquisition?
Yeah, so our company was acquired by Sony and The Orchard, and it will allow for us to have significantly more resources than we had a few days ago. So just in terms of manpower and boots on the ground around the world, and all of the respective divisions, whether it's radio or publicity or A&R, international, really giving us a back office that will allow for us to really scale our company and build, to the point where we feel like we can be competitive with a lot of, other frontline labels. So really gives us very significant manpower and woman power and ability to scale. But we're excited about the partnership. I'm also taking the responsibility of being a Black executive in the music business and how I can advocate for change from the inside out, and making sure that, I do right by this opportunity so that, the Black executives coming up and coming behind me will be given the same types of opportunities and more. But it adds a bit of diversity and entrepreneurial kind of mindset to Sony senior leadership, and I'm committed to doing my part to making sure that I don't let the culture and the community down.
Right. Next question is for Mr. Erving. Doc, through the years, you have mentored many great NBA players, to be greater like Magic Johnson. As you serve as an ambassador of the sport, which modern day NBA player is running to you for guidance?
Which one is running for guidance?
Or which players are running to you for guidance?
Well, everybody from Michael Jordan, Isaiah Thomas, Magic Johnson, just to name a few, on a lower level, guys who are not superstars. Steve Mix, one of my teammates, one of my best friends. I was on the phone with Earl Cureton last night, former teammate, and constantly getting asked to do podcasts that guys have. So I think that's part of the reach out and part of my being available. I think if you let them, because I'm a coach in the Big Three, which is Ice Cube's 3-on-3 basketball league. I'm still in touch with the game itself, and people who were significant contributors to the game. And so that collective of 60 former players and the coaching staffs is a bunch of Hall of Famers. So it's me and Rick Barry, George Gervin, to name a few. Just being in that environment for 10 weeks out of the summer, or whatever, makes people want to reach out to you and want to share their stories with you, and also allows you to learn, to continue to learn, because professional basketball is truly an association, and it's huge business. It's big business at every turn or whatever, and it's a needle that constantly moves. So if you're on the outside, you miss a lot. So being on the inside has been very helpful for me.
That's great. This next question, this is for both of you. We're going to wrap up soon. This one comes from Denise. She says, you are both wonderful role models. How can we bring your values to our youth today so that they can succeed in life? Philadelphia needs strong, positive role models.
Well, I mentioned having a book and having a documentary. So, I mean, those are two means to share a message with an audience. And I guess the other way would be live and in person. If that can be, when that comes back to us, anytime there's an opportunity to, be live and in person in the same room or the same stadium or same arena with, somebody who you look at as a role model, don't be scared to approach them and open your mouth and speak up.
Yeah, I think for me, we're doing the work. Again, back to my friend group is we've done a lot in the city. Just in terms of giving back. And also with my buddy Sean G, who handles the Roots, and Jill Scott, and kind of all of the things that he's brought to the city with the Roots Picnic and and others, just trying to create platforms to continue to create opportunities for young Black and brown kids in the city. But we definitely, it's not something that we really advertise, but we have quietly been able to touch and support different folks in Philly and young people in Philly in a real way.
Mr. Erving III, I want to thank you so much for joining us on Inquirer Live. Thank you for sharing your story on basketball, family, and success. Thank you for sharing your story on mentorship and leadership. And I want to thank you so much for joining us on Inquirer Live. Thank you for sharing your story on basketball, family, and success. Thank you for sharing your story on basketball, family, and success. it's been an honor to host you tonight, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Shemar. Let me just kind of close on my end by saying how proud I am of my son, not just for the man that he's grown up to be, but the type of father that he is. He is inspirational to his children, and he's probably a better father than I was. And, he's living at a different time and a very difficult time, for guys to hang in there. So very proud of you, Jay. Love you very much, and happy
Love
to
you too.
share this stage with you.
Yeah, this was fun. These are usually kind of I like to be behind the camera, but this was fun to be able to do this with my dad, and I just I guess just from not only for me, but just for what he means to my friends and just for the culture. He's had to be dad to millions of young Black kids. So it's we all look up to him and respect what he represents and how he's carried himself, and would hope to live up to that kind of blueprint, right? In the end. So this was a lot of fun. And Shemar, thank you. It was you handled this very well, and this was dope.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate your time. It's been wonderful hosting you all tonight. I appreciate you joining us here on Inquirer Live. Continue, to set the trend, continue to set the course, and all the best to you with human resources. And Dr. J, same to you. Best.
All right. Thank you.